Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Target Transfers podcast, the number one heat printing podcast in the world. Today, Andy and I are going to be talking to you all about how to build and sustain customer relationships. Now, this is one of the most important factors when starting, running, and growing a business. Obviously, you don't have a business without your customers. And it's actually 5 to 25 times more expensive to gain new customers than it is to retain your original ones. Obviously, gaining new customers and growing is an important part of business, but today we're just going to talk a little bit more about ways that you can maybe improve your relationship with your customers and sort of ensure their future business with you as well. We're going to start by talking about the customer journey. Now, obviously, when a customer discovers your business or comes across you on like socials or anything like that, the customer journey of when they first discover you to when they make a purchase is really, really important, whether that be how you communicate with them via emails, social posts, phone calls, if that's how you do business. Just general sort of tips and tricks of what people can improve their customer journey as such.
Yeah, I think it's really important because something to bear in mind is obviously you bring a customer to your website, you want to get them to transact, but when you're having that initial customer journey, you also want to start sowing the seeds for that loyalty and that retention, because for your business to be sustainable, you need for them to come back and back and back, no matter what the product is. Even if the product is not necessarily seasonal, you're still going to have another product in 3 months' time that's a different season at least. So
exactly,
by having to start build that loyalty and that kind of feeling of engaging with you as a brand is really quite important. You want it to be easy to order as well, because actually if it's easy to order, they don't have to think too much about it. They'll be like, oh yeah, that was easy, I'll just order from X company again because it was practical. It saves me time. Something we talk about a lot internally is how we want to make sure that we're cutting down the time a customer needs to spend on our website, taking the steps out of the process, because we want our customers are at their best when they're concentrating on first manufacturing, which we help in different ways in other podcasts. We won't go on that today. We want to make sure that we free them up to make sure they've got enough time to sell and market their business, because that's what's going to bring value into their company. So having that ease of use is definitely a great part of customer retention and building that relationship and that partnership. It's not just a transaction. I think you need to start building the partnership from the very beginning, from the first moment they interact with your brand.
Yeah, I think it's trust is a big element as well. Like, people buy from brands that they know and brands that they trust will deliver the service or the product. Like, if you wanted to buy a new pair of trainers or activewear, where would you go? Nike, Adidas, Puma, those kind of companies. If you wanted electronics, you'd go to Apple, to Samsung, the companies that you know have the best product. So that's what you need to do for your business, really. If you want the best heat press, you go to Optronics. It's that kind of thing. So it's kind of making sure that as well as giving the best product, we educate you on how to, like Andy said, build that relationship with your customers and build the trust.
Yeah, building it in a way that your customer wants to go on the journey, not always the way you want to lead them down a certain route, but you don't want to do it at the that kind of making it difficult for the customer. Ultimately, their journey is the most important one when they're on your website. So making sure that you always come at it from the perspective of their customer. You know, something that we always try and do whenever we relaunch a website, or like, for instance, when we first brought out EasyView a couple of years ago, we made absolutely everyone in the business try and place orders and follow the journey through. So that way we had a large sort of case study and a focus group of people who could come at it from different angles, and certain people are actually, do you know what, that does make more sense. So for instance, the people that are actually printing our transfers have a different perspective to the salespeople, but really the people that are printing our artwork are probably, in any work in production, probably closer to our customers than anyone else in the business. So we made tweaks and changes to make sure we took their feedback on. So making sure that, that's always the most important thing, is making sure it's relatable to your end user and the journey they also want to expect from you.
Yeah, and I think it's meeting the customer midway as well, isn't it? Like you say, it's how far you not push them, that's the wrong terminology, but that there's so far that you want to guide the customer on that journey, like you said, but then there's a certain element where they know what they want, they're only willing to do so much, that side of things as well. So you as a business have to meet your customer halfway almost, because there's only so much that you can provide or offer until it hits the point of what they want as well. You're providing a service to them, and as much as they come to your socials, your website to buy, there's that element of how easy you make it for them and supplying them, that kind of thing.
And one way you can do that is by making sure that the language you use is tailored to that experience as well. Something that we spend a lot of time on is actually what words should we be using on the site. And that's a big one of actually something just because something makes sense to us doesn't mean it makes sense to everyone else.
Especially people that are new to our industry is very specific. So it's difficult to assume that somebody knows exactly what, if we start talking about time, temperature and pressure with application, if somebody who has never fused before will go, what the hell are they talking about? But for our customers, it's easier for them to translate their product and what they sell. But if it's their USPs, for example, they might want to get that across in a certain way that reads, quality, limited edition, there's certain demographics. So how you speak to your customers is important.
An example of that being, for us, for instance, is that when we launched the Easy View a couple of years ago, we took out quite a lot of products and we kind of solidified a lot of products, because something we'd found, because we've been heat printing for 40 something years now, we've actually built up quite a lot of products and quite a lot of variations on products, some for better, some for worse. But there were so many in-house product names that customers would phone up and we'd be like, do you want a Polytran, a Nalotrans, Elastica, Digiprint,
which I still don't fully understand what all of those mean.
No, exactly, but no,
don't need to anymore.
You don't need to. No one, and kind of, you have to be quite humble about it. But actually, customers don't care what we call them, so that's why we call things 1 to 5 color screen prints. We call them full color, ultra color.
Yeah,
and we felt actually, do you know what? So, for instance, the Elastica was our Polytran with stretch in it, but we've actually, do you know what, if we just call it 1 to 5 color and we add stretch, it makes a lot more sense to customers, and customers have been like, now when new customers come on, they're like, it's much easier for them to understand. So but this can be applied to just about any of our customers, because every customer, say for instance you're a fulfillment company, you might say, actually, do you want it to be a JC001 or B3001? Your customers might be like, I don't understand what that means. But if you say, actually, do you want it to be a black t-shirt, and do you want it to feel nice and soft? And they'd be like, yeah. If they say yes, you're like, actually, you need a Bella canvas. Or if they're like, no, you're like, actually, it's a cheap one instead. But it's actually thinking about, what does a customer really care about your jargon? How do they want to? They want to be like, I want it to be like this. What's a kind of common way of saying that, making it accessible? Even for established customers, they probably don't really care about the terminology you want to use either.
As long as they get the product they want at the quality they want, they probably couldn't care less what you call it.
So if you cut all of that nonsense out, that way the customer journey is much improved.
And
they're more likely to return because they found it a straightforward ordering process.
And it comes back to the point of keeping the customer journey quite short as well, like something that we try and do with our customers from the point of engagement or initial contact, whatever you want to call it, the first point of contact, through to the website, through to sale or any conversion like that. We try and keep the steps minimal, because if your customers have to surf through 15 different website pages and scroll through loads of text and loads of images and videos, they're less likely to persevere through that and make a purchase. Whereas if we have some explanatory text on our website, and we have obviously like videos, like how-to, promotionals, those kind of things. They're needed and they're educational and they're informative. So there's a limit, but there's a line between what you do and don't include. But if you have too much of it, or you have too many pages, there's something that was mentioned actually at Brighton SEO that I went to a couple of months ago, and they were talking about cleaning up your website and having less pages than what you think you need. And I think that's really important as well. Like if you go onto a website and there's too many options, you're much more likely to be like, I can't bother to go somewhere else. which I am guilty of. I do it all the time. If it's not quick, easy, we live in an age of instant gratification. If you can't get it within like a few clicks, you're probably not going to get the sale.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, cool. So that kind of leads us on to customer database and CRM as well. So as much as controlling the customer journey or influencing the customer journey, I should say, keeping track of your customers is just as important, because once you have got them and they've gone through that journey and they've made a purchase, they're then on your records, I would like to hope. And then it's about keeping, like what you said earlier, a profile on them, making sure you know sort of what they're interested in buying, if they're engaging with you on socials, and just keeping tabs almost on what they're up to and keeping base with them.
If you don't know who they are.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, it's really important. It's something that we work heavily on at Target Transfers, and I encourage absolutely everyone that's listening to this is maintaining a good database. And I don't mean like an Excel spreadsheet of all your customers, because you could accidentally delete that and you lose everything. It should be something that ideally something that works within your website or can connect to your website, or at least is easy to understand, but somewhere you could hold their data. And you'd have to hold that data under legal requirements as well, in terms of how you hold that data, how you get permission for that data as well, which we won't cover today because that's a bit boring. But you can.
That is boring, and it's a massive thing.
You can watch a lot of video around GDPR.
Isn't GDPR disappearing? I heard somewhere they're not making, because it was a massive thing when it first came out a few years ago.
I think there's been talks about how it might change now that we're no longer part of the EU.
Right. Okay.
Concrete on that one. Yeah, I think they just discussed or thrown the idea around out there. It might change, but I'd say that it's always best to work within the parameters of it, at least for now, because laws and changing.
Oh yeah, 100%
anyway. But
yeah,
it's always best to make sure you've got that customer data and you can prove it. We have an audit trail for all of our customer ops in, so it means that we're solid. If anyone says, actually, where did you get my data? But actually, you filled in this web form, you met your own event, so we can cover that nicely. But the great thing about data in having a customer database is that you can have data, you can analyze data, you can look at, okay, is there a particular month when I get more customers? How often are my customers ordering?
Did I do anything different this month that led to that?
Which goes to the whole point of this event today about retention. If you looked at your database and were actually like, do you know what, I've got loads of customers in my database that never ordered, got loads of customers that have only ever ordered once or only ordered twice, but really thinking about how often do you want your customers to order. And I would say for a lot of our customers, they might be wanting, depending on what their product they're selling, you probably want them to be ordering once a month, or you will need to make sure they're at least ordering. If it's once a year, it's at the right time of the year. Sports season's coming up, school season's coming up. Are they ordering in September, or are they ordering in July for September? That's the most powerful tool you have as a business, really, is data. I mean, absolutely, probably anything else above your having good following on Instagram or TikTok.
But that could disappear overnight. What happens if, so a lot of small businesses, a lot of craftier businesses, a lot of personalization businesses, I could go on, run their businesses off of social media, in particular Instagram and TikTok, which is amazing. That's great that platforms like that can give profits to small businesses. I think that's fantastic. However, what happens if something happens to your account? What happens if something happens to the platform?
Yeah.
It's happened before. If you rely on business on Facebook, I heard of a company who had a massive Facebook group and did loads and loads of business off of the back of it. But one day something went wrong in the system and the whole group disappeared, and they had no email data of any of them to back it up. So they had to start from scratch. It was a business turning over hundreds of thousands each month, and it suddenly disappeared overnight. If you've got that database and that CRM of contacts, you can just email them and say, hey, this is our new page, come over and say hi. I mean, it's a lot quicker to build it back up, and you never lose that communication with your customers.
Yeah, exactly. And it can, get just on the topic of emails, the CRM system or some sort of database is normally the best platform to then start those emails out, either it's just kind of informative, but actually promotional. Yeah. Because it's still, within this industry, it's still a very undervalued marketing tool.
It's a massive marketing tool that people don't make the most of.
And it's very easy. I mean, you can get started for free with MailChimp or something similar as like that. Send emails out, but unless you've got that data in the first instance, you can't send out enough emails to promote.
I do
product
think
offerings, keep them educated, keep that customer journey going. Build that loyalty.
I do think that there's a bit of a stigma around email marketing, and I think a lot of people, particularly new, younger business owners, think of it as a bit of an old-fashioned marketing tool, which I do and don't agree with. I mean, half the emails that come through my inbox I don't look at, but I'm only really subscribed to, I did go through and unsubscribe from quite a few because I was signed up to way too many, as we all are. But the ones I get through now are ones that I genuinely would open and look at. And they're often companies that send more informative, educational, helpful content than just buy our products. If there's a sale, great, everyone likes a discount. But the generic content of what's coming through those emails is something I genuinely open, but a lot of people do get a load of spam through their inbox and they just don't open anything. So I can understand why people would be hesitant to use email marketing, but I do think if you get it right, then you could make some big gains for your business through email marketing.
And it's another way of understanding your customers, because if you've got an intelligent enough system or database or email platform, you can find out the customers that do click on your emails. You can find out why they're clicking on your emails, what they're clicking on your emails,
what terminology works better.
Yeah, exactly. You can test different taglines that then you might use on Instagram anyway, but you've got that information to back it up. But a lot of our customers, they might not necessarily, a lot of them are still 9 to 5, or they're at least like 8 till 8 or something like that, where they still do interact. They have desktop, so they actually do, that email will get in front of them at some point in that day.
Well, we do. A lot of our customers are email opted in, and that's how we communicate with them, because obviously there's a lot of different customer demographics for Target in particular. We obviously have some newer, younger businesses that come through that are a lot more social heavy, and then our more traditional bigger companies, if you will, are less engaging on there and then more on the email. So it's knowing how to communicate to different types of customers through different platforms, which leads us on quite nicely to different platforms, actually. So obviously we've got all of the typical YouTube, social, TikTok, blah, 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 blah. Email, which we've covered. Blogs and SEO is a big one as well. That comes down to the education side of things, and SEO for reaching new customers. But how would you recommend people use blog posting for customer retention? Because it is kind of something that you use to grow your website and to get new customers and appear at the top of search results.
Well, something that we believe with the Target Transfers, and we believe as Styles as well, is that education has always been the most important thing that we can provide our customers with, and to continually educate your customers. The intelligent customers of ours and of the people listening to this podcast will be the ones that are continually educating themselves and trying to upskill themselves. So actually, by providing value to your customers, you're creating that you're solidifying that relationship, and you're kind of creating that retention. Because I think, I remember that time the Target Transfers told me about this business opportunity that, for instance, the amount of companies that we've helped sell levers designs, which have a great profit margin, or hats with 360 press. They're like, but they really appreciate the fact that we said, "Have you thought about doing this? Here's something that's doing really well in the market.
Introduce it.
Here's how you do it. Here's steps from A, B, C, D to Z." So that way you can follow it. Like, actually, I did make that that deal work for me. Or we explain, actually, sometimes we actually tell customers, you shouldn't buy that. You should buy this instead, and it's cheaper. And they're like, actually, do you know what? I'm really grateful for you educating me on how
to save a bit of money.
Buy the right product.
Or the other way around. If they have like another £200-300 in their budget, they could get a better press that will last them for another 5-10 years in terms of capacity that they might have been hesitant about buying. Whereas through educating them through that, you can go, actually, you'd be better off long term with this one as well. And
blogs are a great one for it, because it's a very easy way to, you don't have to say too many words, but you can kind of give a little bit of a nugget of information. and they're like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, that makes sense. I'll try and apply that, and if it works, it's great.
And it's like the over-promising thing as well. I was doing some sort of research into different areas of customer retention and what people recommend. We're going to go through some recommended customer retentions a bit later in the podcast, but one of them is relevant now. And it was over-promising on what you promise your customers, or over-delivering, on what you promise your customers. And that's kind of what we do to an extent with our free templates and things like that. Not only do we say you should brand your products because it's good for future sales and brand awareness, but also here's a free template to do it. That's exactly what you should do with your customers. And that's a good example of sort of why that works.
And it's also a great way of adding to the story of your business. So you're, to your point about you don't want to have too many website pages because it can be a bit messy, but there's something you still have to say something, you could perhaps supplement that with blog pages that add a little bit extra, but they're not going to get in the way of actually buying something. But if someone wants to go down that rabbit hole, the content is there, but it's not getting in the way of them buying something. Exactly. It could be a brand or fulfillment company, depending who's anyone that's listening to it. If you're a brand, you can tell a little bit more story about your business. You could perhaps give an update, even if it's just a case of here's a little about what we're doing and just putting a YouTube video in there just to tell us the rest of the story. Or if you're a fulfillment company, in the same way that we might say, actually, here's a really great idea that something that's working in the industry, you could then also, there's a version of that for every single business. So you can always educate your customers, actually, here's a great way, here's a great new product, here's a great new t-shirt style, a great new hoodie style that we recommend, and you can add value that way. Or we actually say, here's some new colors that we might provide you with new colors that you can then pass on of your own. So if you have some new Pantone screen colors, or we talk about how you can do shimmer colors at Christmas. There's something that you can always borrow from us and use it to your own advantage as well. Because at the end of the day, we're here to help your businesses grow. So the better your business does, the better our business does. Okay, I'm going to go back to so under the topic of platforms, there was a comment on meeting your customers on the platforms they're already on versus jumping on new platforms as soon as they come out. So a good example of this would be obviously when TikTok came out. Not everyone's very hard. Some people jumped on TikTok, some people were late to the party, and the ones that jumped on TikTok to begin with are most likely the ones that are maybe doing better at it now. But TikTok is one of those platforms where your first video could go completely viral if you do it right. It's not penalizing you for any algorithm changes. But in terms of customers and what platforms they're using, there's a bit of discussion around, I suppose it comes down to capacity in your business as well, which was something we were discussing earlier. But if you, for example, your customers are on Instagram predominantly and a new platform comes out, i.e. TikTok, do you take away some of the time and effort you put into Instagram to create TikTok content to potentially build future business? Or do you continue putting your efforts onto Instagram because that's where you know your customers are and that's where you're making sales? And even though in an ideal world it would be good to do both, not everyone has the time and the energy to do both. And in an ideal world, every business would have a social or a marketing employee to do it for them, but that isn't a reality for a lot of business owners. So that's sort of something I think we should go over as well. I think, and one of the most important things is it is important to be on the platform where your customer's attention is. You should never take the approach of, actually, I like this platform, so I'm going to make content because I go on Instagram, so I prefer that, so I'm going to make content for that, because you're not thinking about why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. So you have to be very careful that because a platform could go away overnight. That's possible. So you don't want to be kind of too deep in any platform, because you should always be prepared to pivot if you need to. But I'd say the thing that kind of jumps out to me is okay, fair enough, you haven't got time to do all platforms all at the same time. That's reasonable. But how many people who say that then go home in the evening and spend time on their phone? So I guess the thing I'm thinking is that you might not necessarily be at a point where you can create content for every platform, but you're probably consuming in some form or another. So why you could at least be listening or kind of paying attention. So say, new platform comes out, you could be like, actually, do you know what, I'm going to, even if I just start following a few accounts and see what people are doing, so in a couple of months' time,
when I'm ready to
do it, I'm kind of fully prepared. So you're not going to be going in blind when you do decide, because then it might be that it's too late, or you're just going to spend a lot of time catching up. So, think about time management. Is there something, that other thing you're doing that perhaps you could save time on? We've spent, I would hazard a guess that, anyone that listened to our time-saving podcast, where we potentially save people days and weeks, a year, you followed some of those techniques, then you've got time at that point to go back and actually, you could probably save 10, even if you just save 10 minutes every day by doing things the right way. Okay, that's 10 minutes you could spend on TikTok looking at, okay, what's going on, how people creating content. Is there any overlap with my existing content? I'm not a big fan of having one piece of content and posting on every single platform, because it's not tailored to do it, but sometimes the same piece of content is relevant, and you can always just dabble and start trying it that way.
Yeah. Or the time that you do spend scrolling through socials, cut that in how many hours when you get your screen report on your phone, how many hours a week do we spend on our phones? Too many. Even if you cut that time in half, or took a quarter of it and put that towards creating content or coming up with ideas or something, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. Is how you use your time. So if creating content for different platforms is something that you want to get into, set yourself reasonable goals and go, right, this week I'm going to make sure to write 3 ideas down every day, or spend half an hour thinking of new ideas. Next week I'll start to think up how I'm going to film them. Then I'll start making them. Content, as we discussed in our marketing Q&A, isn't about getting it right the first time. It's about getting started, getting practicing, just getting better with every video you post. So just use the dead time that you have in a day, which we all have. We're all guilty of it. You sit down for 5 minutes on your phone, and 3 hours later you've been watching random animal videos on TikTok. So I think that everyone has time, and I understand that, yes, if you run your own business, you are busy, you're probably stressed, you've got a lot on, you don't have as much free time as other people maybe, but there's always half an hour to dabble in something new if you're that passionate about doing it. Okay, so next let's mention branding. So something that we talk about a lot is obviously adding neck labels to your garments, but that's obviously specific to heat printers in business. But things like brand guidelines, so colors and fonts, are things that people will recognize. And yes, we're talking about customer retention, but if your customer recognizes your brand and comes to, like I say, know it and trust it, they're more likely to be, if they see an email, for example, that's in your business style, they'll go, oh, I know them, and let's have a look at what they've got going on, and then they're more likely to purchase again. So I think it's a smaller one in terms of customer retention, but it's important to have branding somewhere on your business priority list, I think. And what we were saying earlier as well about how you speak to customers. So conversation style was a point that I wanted to mention as to the way you talk to your customers, because again, it's repetition, but it's also that communication barrier.
Consistency of message.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So yes, if you're not branding already, please do.
Well, exactly. You have to remember why your customer bought from you in the first place, because of the journey that you took them on. So you need to make sure that you're being consistently taking them on that journey, or a similar journey, or a journey that follows up from that journey.
I'm very confused on the journey front now. No, I understand what you mean. There's just a lot of paths that people can take here.
Make sure you're consistent, because that way your customers will keep coming back to you that way.
I don't know why I pictured the Wizard of Oz, like with all the paths when you said that. Cool. And then extra touches that make customers remember you and want to shop with you again. So something that I've seen a few of our customers do, which is a really nice idea, is they either hand write like thank you notes for shopping with us, which, as I say, if you have a lot of orders, it might be harder to keep up with the volume. They don't need to be particularly like an A4 old-fashioned style letter, just like a thank you so-and-so for shopping with whoever the brand is. Or putting in like Honey Pie Art, one of our old, unfortunately she's not selling garments anymore, very sad about that, but she used to include I think stickers on some orders, and just like little cards and like quotes that people could like put up in the mirror, and it's all little touches like that make customers go, oh, I really enjoyed receiving that package, like opening it and discovering what's inside is an experience. And if it's just a really boring branded box, they'll go, oh, that's not that great. And
it's a special feeling when they open it.
Yeah, which goes back to over-promising, over-delivering. I can't say that. Yeah. Over-delivering on your promises to customers.
Yeah, when we always send our transfers out often in nice red boxes, so there's a nice experience opening them up.
And branding.
Yeah, exactly.
Bright red boxes, everyone knows who they're coming from. Okay, that's everything that we had sent in for building and sustaining relationships. Should we go through now some of the generic how to improve customer retention points?
I just got one thing that I wanted to add actually on the building relationships, because something, and it's probably more for our fulfillment customers rather than our brands that sell direct to the end user.
Yeah.
Something that's always important to remember is, okay, so customers, you've initially brought the customer in, either they've ordered or you've had a meeting with them or you're coming in to present to them, is to remember who within that company you're dealing with. So from a fulfillment point of view, you might be dealing with multiple people within that organization, and you want to make sure that everything you're doing in terms from a retention point of view is being directed in the right way to the right person. So what I mean is that the person, say for instance, we sell the transfers to you. You apply the transfers and then you provide these garments to a sports team, a school, whoever it may be, a corporate client.
Yeah, end user.
But the person that is actually ordering the product is probably going to be someone in the accounts department. So they are part of they're an important person because they're going to write the check, but they're not going to.
They're the ones that pay you.
But they're not the person that's going to make the decision on whether they use your business necessarily. They might do if they're told to get prices, they might be, but from an experience point of view, they might not necessarily be the right person. So making sure that you're always speaking to the right person. So that way, for instance, say you provide some clothing to a company, you want to make sure you actually speak to the person that's going to wear the garment. Yeah. Because that's the person that you really need to win over. So you might pitch your business to someone like, you've got the job. That's great. And that's the MD of the company or someone high up. That person might never wear it. And they might never have any touch point with you ever again. So you did well to get them in the first place, but the retention needs to be with the right person. It's the person that's in charge of making sure that everyone in that company has branded clothing on them at all times, making sure that person knows actually it's hot, it's scorching at the moment. Have you provided them, maybe speak to them, so actually do you need shorts with branding on them rather than like fleece jumpers?
Yeah.
And making sure that person who's a decision maker is always the one that you look after. I remember I used to work for a software company, and one of the things that we used to provide as part of an add-on was bill of materials, because we'd be doing it for product designers. And something that my old marketing and sales manager there used to say to me is actually the most important thing he did when he went to pitch. They're selling 7-8 grand worth of software, but the person they're pitching to is someone who's ordering the software, not the person who's using the software, or ultimately actually making the product. So I'd always make a point of going to the factory and say, can I just have a look around, and then speak to people that's actually going to be impacted by the product you're selling to them, making sure that your attention is directed at them and not kind of blindly just at the company.
Yeah, more of a generic email that goes, hey, we sell this, come and check us out, because that's more likely to go in the junk folder.
Yeah, so if you've got that database and you can identify customer types and customer roles, then you can make sure you're always consistently retaining or trying to retain with the right message to the right person.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I like that. Okay. So I have some more generic recommendations that I looked up earlier. So I'm going to fire them at you, not literally, and see what your opinion is. And we can just have a discussion about whether we think it's a good idea, how we'd recommend our heat printing customers go about them, etc.
Yep.
So some of them we've already covered. So one was retain customers with a smooth onboarding process. So this kind of links in with journey as well, but also not at the same time. So onboarding obviously is the initial conversation and purchase, not just the journey. So if it's kind of a bit clunky, or there's something wrong with the order, or if their initial first experience with you isn't the smoothest, cleanest transaction it can be, they're less likely to convert. So when you get a new customer come through, and your existing customers are just as important, but try and keep it clean, smooth, efficient. Number 2, close the loop on customer feedback.
Okay.
So I think this one is more along the lines of when customers say, oh, I think we'd be better off with heat printing, for example. Oh, we really like this about the product, but we kind of need it in a t-shirt or a sweater. We like this color, but can this bit be bigger or something like that? Really going above and beyond for listening to what your customers want and delivering on that is kind of what I took from that one.
I think it goes back to the point you made earlier about making sure that you're speaking to the customer in the way that they want to be spoken to, not the way you want to speak to necessarily. Making sure the language is always consistently how they will understand it, not how you might think about it in-house. Yeah.
This one I thought was a good idea, and it's kind of related to the whole freebie thing, but reward promoters and loyal customers. So whether or not you do a discount on however many quantity they order, or if they order more than 3 or 4 times, you get like a 5th order for a discount or something like that, or you get a free product or things like that. If they continue, a bit like loyalty cards for like coffee shops and things like that.
I think that, that's an interesting point, because it's something that obviously you always have to be making sure you've got new customers coming into the business, because some will always disappear for one reason or another, but you also don't want to promote them so heavily or incentivize them so much that you alienate your existing customers. And you then put a risk at not sustaining and keeping that relationship with them going. So if you're always offering off 20% off your first order, your existing customers are going to be like, that doesn't make any sense. So something we did, we always made sure that the pricing on our website is the most competitive for any customer, new or existing. They're always going to get the best price if you're an existing customer, because you can keep coming back. And that price is always very transparent. To make
and everyone gets the discount.
There's no special treatment. Everyone's looked after in a special way.
Showing transparency in communications, I thought was an interesting one, because it goes back to what we were talking about with trust. And I'll use an example of if an order is going to be delayed, or an order goes wrong, or there's an error or something like that. If whether it was your fault or not, whether it was preventable or not, being upfront and honest and saying, look, this has happened. I'm sorry, there's not much I can do about it, but this is what I'm going to do to fix it, is rather than like trying to cover it up and fix it in the background. A bit like what Taffy was saying on the last podcast episode he was on about the mistake that he made, and he was honest with his clients and they ended up helping him out. If he'd have just hidden in the background, he would have presented them with a half product and they'd have gone, well, this isn't what I asked for. Why didn't you tell us there was an issue? That kind of thing.
I mean, a bit like the other day we made a video for our customers, because one of the most important things we always preach is following the recipe of time, temperature, pressure. And we wanted to show what happens when you don't follow those things, rather than you can talk to a blue in the face about how you should follow the recipe, but until you show someone what happens when you don't follow the recipe, it doesn't always make as much sense.
It peels off, trust me.
You always follow the recipe, but we wanted to show you and be quite transparent about why we broke our own rules to prove that point.
I enjoyed that. That was a fun video. I've never fused a transfer intentionally wrong before. Okay, so we've engaged customers via social media. We've got that one, focus on quality customer service and experience. That's covered. Mail handwritten thank you notes. We've mentioned that. Create systems to measure customer value. That comes in keeping with a CRM system or something like that. How would you go about structuring that? Would you do it for customers that are, say, spending more or buying more regularly, or would you split it out differently?
I think it's both, really. For me, I would say that you need to, you want someone to be ordering regularly, no matter what business you're in. But you want to understand people that order more or less, there's always a story behind those numbers. So it could be that someone orders twice or 3 times as many as someone that spends twice as much, but in the end they all equal the same. So it's always important to I always try and look at the data 2 different ways when we're kind of looking at customers ordering, and then I also try and see if there's a way I can kind of almost contradict myself to make sure that I get the right result, to make sure I'm not just making the data.
Oh, you always question everything.
You don't want to make, you don't want to just make the data look how you want it to look. So if you have got a customer database and you can report on your customers, be quite honest with yourself and say, actually, always try and find something to do better. Don't just sit on your laurels because, actually, I've got loads of customers. ordering loads of times. Actually, then you always forget to check on that retention. As you know, the topic we're talking about today, you could get blinded by the fact there's lots of new orders coming, but these customers might order once and then never come back. But you really want someone who comes back every single month on a regular basis and has long-term value to you.
Yes.
So whatever you can do within, depending on what your product or service is, to identify those ones with the long-term value, and then make sure you sustain that and build that relationship with them.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Another one is working together on a common cause. These are exactly how they were written on the case study I found, by the way, so they don't all make complete sense.
Yeah.
But the description on this one was about finding something in common with your customers and working on it with them, obviously, statement. But the example was like charity work, or if there's a meaning behind something or a message or a goal or something like that, something that's relatable to your customers, that you sort of explain that as to why. Like if your products are, I don't know, vegan or sustainable or something like that, your customers might be like, oh, well, I'm really into, taking care of the environment too. I'll show more of an interest in your brand than I will the one that's churning out 1 million cheaper, less sustainable garments. So that kind of thing, you have to connect with your customers on like an emotional level almost as well. If you're doing slogan tees, it might be something that your slogan tee says that your customers go, everything you say I completely relate, that kind of thing.
I think there's a lot of customers, either as an end user for a brand or even as a kind of B2B relationship that our customers have, where sustainability is a great example, because that's a really hot topic, and it's actually anything you can do together to show that you're providing something. We have quite a few customers now that every time you buy a t-shirt, you might plant a tree as a kind of, that's part of their giving back and paying forward everything that they do. That was an angle similar to that. That's something you could do. Or even it's just from a fulfillment point of view, your customer has something they want to achieve, is actually working together to really understand what they want, and kind of spending time to actually, I can get that logo to go there on that jumper. I can get that color you really want. I can get that combination of things. So, it's all about, it comes back to building that partnership with them.
This next one is a really good point. Okay. I'm just going to prepare you for this.
Yep.
Follow up with your existing customers. What a great point.
Yeah.
Showcase your clients on social media. That again comes back to whether or not they'd want to be showcased, but quite a lot of our customers at the moment do those reels where they're like, packing so-and-so's order, and they get quite good engagement. So I suppose it depends on your business and your customers, but it could be a good idea. Ask customers for feedback on your service. This is always a good one, because no matter how big or how well-known your business gets, there's always room to improve. And I think the businesses that succeed are the ones that can take constructive criticism and learn and grow from that. So there's nothing wrong with asking for a bit of feedback. Call 25 to 50 customers every month. I'm not sure a lot of heat printers work like that anymore. Do they phone and go, hello, would you like some t-shirts? Or is it more online now?
I'd say it's probably, some of them more old school ones, that's probably a day, I think, rather than a month, because then you might only speak to one customer every day.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, 25 to 50 a month, so one a day.
Yeah, it's probably
that would work out.
I would say.
Oh, okay.
I think it depends on how you interact with your customers, but I think
and how many you've got.
Yeah, I think you have to be communicating with them in one form or another, be it you're sending an email out, or you're providing value with your social content or the video you're putting out. If they're not getting some form of touch point with them, then call them. That it could be a great option, because it could be that you can always use the same content or same messaging to provide value, because just phone up and say, actually, this is really popular at the moment. We could help you out with this. We could provide this for you, or we've got a brand new garment colors in, or garment cuts that you've been asking for. I think it's good to have a personal conversation sometimes with a customer, especially your bigger customers, to really get to the root cause of their motivations and understanding how you can help, because you never know, there might be something that comes up in conversation that you didn't realize that they were even missing, and they kept forgetting to tell you about, and you end up solving a solution that you didn't know you could for them, but ultimately builds an even better long-term relationship with them.
Yeah. And the last one is a little bit different, but it's still relative. Invest in your people so they invest in your customers. And the description for this one was basically if your business has employees, for example, or if you have someone who does your social media or your email marketing or something along those lines, or even your admin, that kind of thing, building a relationship with your team and investing in your team's skill set and them knowing you value them gives them more of not an opinion, it gives them more of a reason to want to connect with your business's customers and keep that relationship going as well. So customers aren't the only important people in the process of sustaining customer relationships.
It's true, but I mean, to be honest, we try, just me and you personally, try and provide value every week by doing a live video to our customers to make sure we're constantly educating people, helping them out as much as possible. But a big part of what we do here as marketers is getting new customers in. So we need to make sure that everyone else in the business who might speak to a customer day to day, someone who phones up and wants help with something, is not going to speak to either of us because we're busy making video and helping other people out, sending emails out. But we need to make sure the person they do speak to understands what we're talking about and is on board with everything we do, and empower them to also help the business without having to come back to us and say, have you got any ideas? They should be, they should feel empowered to actually, have you thought about this? Or just ask and speak to, or just listen to the customer. It's very important.
Yeah, and that brings it back to brand messaging and communication as well. Like if somebody was to DM us on socials or comment on one of our videos or something and engage with us versus email or phone customer service, they're different people that you're dealing with, but it's the same company. So if you were to receive two different answers or terminology or anything like that, you would be very confused as a customer as to who you're dealing with and what and why, and it would put you off to a certain extent. So that's something we always make sure we're doing, is that the terminology, the information, any deals that we have, everyone's always aware of, and that everything is consistent throughout the business. So no matter what funnel they come through, everything ends up in the same pool in the end. Yeah. I don't have any more points.
No, I think the only thing I would say, just to kind of end this, is obviously, we've spoken today about there's lots of things you can do for your business.
I think we've only scratched the surface, really, haven't we?
And going back to your point about which should I be doing stuff for this platform, have I got enough time? Podcasting is a great way to communicate with your customers, like we try and do on a weekly basis. But again, to the point of, has everyone got time to do it? Maybe not. But one thing that we love to hear about, our customer stories, love to hear your story. So if you wanted to try and dip your toe in the water with podcasting, for instance, we'd love to have you on. We'd love to hear about your story. Come by, for half an hour, or join us online, and you can make your first foray into podcasting that way, just by coming and have a chat with us. Yeah,
we have got some very exciting guests lined up for the next few months on the Target Transfers podcast. I won't reveal who. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to make you wait until the episodes come out. But they are going to be good ones. I'm very happy about that. I think that's it for today. So thank you everyone, as usual, for joining us. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube if that's where you're watching. Make sure to follow our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all of the favorite streaming platforms, and come and follow us on socials as well. It's at Target Transfers and at Target Transfers Podcast. And that's everything. We will see you next Thursday.